All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Mohith, and I have Karishma with me because today we are going to look at our Scale Center product. And I'm really excited about this whole code live because, I have never sort of explored a Scale Center a lot. So really looking forward to learn from you. But before that, for all of you, right? This is Code Live, so you have chat open. So please feel free to ask any questions. We'll keep the queue coming up, and we'll pick your questions for sure. And now I would like to go over to Karishma to get started and get introduced.
Thank you, Mohit. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining. I'm Karishma Lalwani. Just a quick introduction. I've been with Salesforce for over 10 years now and been working on CRM for the last 2 decades or so. Interesting fun fact, before moving into product, I was actually an architect on the field, working, implementing large scale Salesforce solutions for our enterprise customers. So I've had the journey of starting from being a developer to an integration expert to an architect, and then finally product, which is a completely different skill set. But the way I look at it is there's always a problem to be solved in whichever role you are. So it's been really interesting to grow in a different space. And Scale Center is especially exciting because it is born out of the pain points that I have personally experienced being on the field as an architect. So I got to take that pain point and then make a product out of it. So it's very rare that people get this opportunity, but very, very excited to share about it and show you deep dive into the product today with all of you. So happy to be here.
Yeah, again, thank you so much, Karishma. I know you are busy, with Dreamforce coming up, and also because you own the whole product suite for Scale Center, and you have a lot of products and a lot of innovations going on, and release planning for the next release as well. So thanks for actually taking time for our developer community here. We truly appreciate. With
Absolutely.
that, yeah, with that, Karishma, why would let's share your screen, and because typically at Code Live we do the live code. But I
Yes.
think for Scale Center, right, it's more about like performance of that code that we write, right?
Yes.
So how about you level set us, all of us, like what is Scale Center, how to work with Scale Center, and then probably we can go from there deeper into like demos, and then take a look at some code examples and see, what it has to offer.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Mohit. So, just to set some context here, and I promise it won't be more than 5 minutes of slideware. This is a code live session. We'll go into the org and see it in action. But let me walk you through at least what the reason why Scale Center is born, right? So, when we talk about scale, the trend that we see is that scale has always been an afterthought, whether it's product or implementation. Typically, you run into performance and scale issues after you deploy a solution or after you've had a massive deployment of users in one of the major releases, let's say. So all these issues are really hard to catch. That's one of the reason. And secondly, with the emphasis on speed to innovation, oftentimes solutions are deployed and then only to realize that okay, they work for a certain set of users, but what about a million users accessing the same feature set? Is it going to scale? So that is where we are trying to build products which will give those insights early on in the development life cycle.
Got
And when we talk about the development life cycle, typically where you would start to think about it, if not in design, at least in testing, is
it.
where we emphasize each of you to understand how to scale test, how to performance test. So today, customers get throttled when they're conducting these tests. There are all sorts of limits that come to play, and you realize as part of your testing. And then the second part is even when it comes to analysis, there's a huge gap in understanding what metrics should I care about, what
Mhm.
logs do I have access to. And this continues into production as well. If your business user is seeing a concurrent Apex error, they don't know what to do or where to look at. Their first instinct is call up the support helpline and raise a case. And then it takes 2 to 3 days to even understand what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
So all of this behavior is what we are trying to change. We're trying to shift left. We're trying to gain insights early on in the development cycle. So this is where Scale Center and other products in my portfolio come to play. Is we want to be proactive in assessing these risks, whether it's providing key insights, code recommendations, root cause analysis, all of that through a single pane of glass. And this is essentially what Scale Center is. In terms of persona, Scale Center will help everybody. If you're a developer, which the audience here is, there is tons of insights around Apex code that we will see. Architects usually look at the solution holistically in terms of integration patterns. Performance engineers are the ones who conduct these scale tests, so they definitely would use it to just determine hotspots at a high level. And then admin would look for flow performance or lightning performance, those aspects that Scale Center will provide. So where do we want to go? Today, it's very time consuming to identify bottlenecks to begin with. With Scale Center, we are giving you self service in your org, in app, to be able to see these metrics and insights. Today, you don't have the visibility, you're relying on a human, whether it's your success manager, TAM, architect, or support. Tomorrow, you have this information readily available as part of your org setup. Today, it's more proactive, but we are trying to make it, today it's reactive, we are trying to push it to more proactive thinking. This will come if you actually include testing and specifically scale testing as part of your ALM.
Got it. Got it.
So this is really the message that I wanted to start with before we go into deep dive. Um, any questions before I move on?
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of questions at this point in the chat, but I do have a question on this scale center as a whole, right?
Sure.
So let's talk about our developers, right? They are typically writing code, and I've been myself like a developer. So I write code, and we just use test classes to test, and then we rely on, like, let's say our business, QA, or our test scripts that, let's say we have a dedicated testing team that has created.
Yeah.
But what I've seen, like as you said, like after like the code gets deployed and then the solution gets used for, like, let's say a couple of years, and then there's data volumes that we did not think of, and that is where we start seeing all these issues.
Right.
In terms of like scale center, can it like tell right away like this is the issue in my code, or is it like more of some metrics that we gather from by application usage from various customers?
Yeah. So I would say the maximum benefit you would get in terms of scalability, because you need to have a specific kind of data profiling and test profiling to generate that much scale.
Yeah.
Uh, as a developer, if you are into, let's say, your system integration, user acceptance, or perf testing, which happens in a full copy sandbox,
Hmm.
you will be able to see insights in a full copy. Um,
I see.
regarding your code, and commonly occurring errors. But if you're just unit testing as a single developer, you may not even run into those issues. So then you would not have that many insights.
Okay. Got it.
So the factor, the magnitude of scale is where you would start to see helpful insights in terms of how your application will behave at that peak volume that you expect it to handle.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Without further ado, let's actually take a look at that. Take a look at scale
Yeah.
center, and as you kind of walk through, like, help us, kind of understand like how can, like, let's start from the basics, right? Uh,
Yes.
how can one enable? Is it available right now? Like, is scale center available right now?
Yes. So if you are a customer who is on unlimited edition, it is available to you right now.
Okay.
We made it generally available for all our UE customers this
Okay.
summer.
Okay,
Um,
UE in the sense means unlimited edition, right?
Unlimited edition, yes.
Okay, so if somebody is like, let's say, using enterprise edition, how will they get access to this?
So today there is a internal exception process. So let's say you are not a UE customer, you're an enterprise edition, but you really are running into those scale bottlenecks and you're having significant performance issues. You're getting throttled, you're getting sev ones raised on a weekly basis. You can have the account team reach out to the
Got
product team, and we have an exception process to help our customers who would really benefit from this, even if they are not UE.
Got it. Okay, thanks for sharing that. So where would an org administrator? So we don't get this. So my understanding is we don't get this in sandboxes or scratch orgs. This is something that is exclusively in that in that production org. Correct?
It is in production and it's in your full copy sandboxes. So if you have a
Okay.
full copy sandbox, you will have Scale Center as well.
Okay. Full copy sandboxes. Okay. That's good to know.
Yes.
So in the setup, so I see you are in the setup screen of Salesforce,
Yeah.
and we have something called a scale center. So is there like a flag that they need to enable? Like how is the starting experience? If you could
Right.
sum it up.
So if you come to this performance tab, everything that you see here is all the products that my team is working on. There are a couple of other products like performance assistant, scale testing that we are developing, but essentially this entire leaf is dedicated for this area, which is basically how do I performance and scale test.
Okay.
The very first time when you land over here and in setup, you can just do a quick find on Scale Center. The very first time that you will land on a blank page. This is
Mhm.
obviously already activated.
Okay.
But if you haven't activated, it will just be like a switch to say activate Scale Center. And once you turn it on, it takes about 2 hours for the very first time for us to start collecting the metrics and the log information. But after that, anytime you come to Scale Center, this is the first view that you see.
Okay.
So it's very simple. Go to your org, search for Scale Center, hit that toggle to activate Scale Center, and then get started on it.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So here, right, what I want to see is, okay, break this down for us. Like, what is this
Right.
information, right? If and Okay, so let's talk about developer flow here, right? I mean, as a developer, right, they don't have access to production orgs typically, like let's say a consultant or a developer, they don't get
Yeah.
access to the production org. So are they relying on like an administrator for fetching these reports?
Yes.
Or okay,
In the first release, yes, but we are doing a fast follow to open it up to other kind of profiles. So you will see that very quickly come out. Uh, in the first release, like right now, it's admins,
okay.
but it's something that we are actively working on right as we speak, and that will be available very soon for other profiles that are non-sys admins.
Got it. And we have a very interesting question from someone from the community. Thanks again for the question. How can we get org performance data by Apex? Want to show this data in LWC component? I
Yeah,
think,
I'll show the Apex bit here as well.
yeah,
That's where if you see on the screen this Apex Guru Insights, that's what I will touch upon in terms of
okay,
Apex.
got it.
Um, so let's say there are two use cases typically that customers come to Scale Center.
Hmm.
One is as part of your life cycle, you have conducted a performance test in a full copy sandbox, and
Hmm.
you really want to know what happened in the test. How many errors? What does my the performance look like at a high level? That's the first use case, which is pre-production. The
Okay.
second use case that we have seen customers come to Scale Center, and it's actually a 50-50 split on where the value is. We are seeing customers use it both pre-prod and production equally.
Hmm.
The second time that a customer would come to Scale Center is maybe on a daily basis to just do a quick sanity check to see, logins are working, not many failed logins, any errors. So
Hmm.
that's like just a regular check. But more specifically, if you get throttled or if a business user is complaining that performance is slow, this is the first page that you would go to see what is exactly happening. And
Hmm.
this is live production data that we are bringing in.
Okay.
If we talk about production, the very first thing you would do is select the time frame.
Okay.
So we have data, these are pre-filtered, so last 4 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, but you can always enter a custom date time.
Okay.
Uh, Scale Center is as real time as you can get access. We are able to collect metrics from, let's say, the last 10 minutes or so. So even if there's a delay, I would say it's maximum of 10 to 12 minutes.
Got it.
But that is as real time as we are able
Yeah,
to
real time.
provide
Yeah.
you information.
Got it. Okay, cool. This is very cool. Okay, so you just select the time range, and
Yes.
there is a maximum limit of that range, like how far I can go back in the history.
Yes. So the ranges, um, if you want to isolate a specific issue, the shorter the time window that you take, the better the results are. So
Mhm.
let's say if the business user said, 7 a.m. PST, there was some degradation, you probably take like 6:50 or 6:45 a.m. to 7:15, ideally, so that you can really get that deep view into that specific time frame.
Got it.
And you can go back 30 days. So any incidents, issues, reported errors, you can go back 30 days in time in
Mhm.
this time range to be able to select and view what happened in that time frame.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And I'm thinking there is this range that you are specifying. Like I cannot go beyond 30 days or something. Is that
30
correct?
days. Yes.
Okay, 30
Yeah.
days.
30 days. Historically, it's 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And from a time frame, 12 hours is the max you can select. But
Okay.
as I said, if you want to get really accurate in terms of where the issue is, select a narrower time window so that you're able to clearly see where the hotspots are.
Got it. Okay, so in this one, right, I think the ones that are relevant to our community is concurrent apex errors, row lock
Yes.
errors, probably callout errors, maybe concurrent
Mhm.
UI errors. So let's talk about one of them. Like let's talk about, okay, if I have to see, I think row lock. Let's take example of row lock errors. I think this is
Yes.
very common. We very commonly experienced error for Salesforce developers.
Yes.
Um, or somebody who is loading up the data, like let's say they're using data loader or some other tool like bulk API to do the load. We have seen row lock errors, typically.
Yes.
And just to level set it up, right? I mean, as a developer myself, right? The only way I used to get around these errors, and first of all, this is like a little bit of information from my end. Like I always, I'm more passionate about like Apex best practices, right? So, like row lock errors are typically when you have like an asynchronous job, like let's say there's some developer has written a batch Apex, right?
Yeah.
And that batch Apex is kind of processing the data. And at the same time, you have a user who is trying to access the data. You will see these lock errors.
Yeah.
Very common scenario is when you have like let's say a parent record that has like different child record, and to maintain that integrity between parent and the child record, especially for master detail relationships. Let's say to some sort of an operation is happening and your parent is locked, but then the other
Mhm.
user is trying to access that parent.
Yes.
We're seeing these errors, and
Yes.
typically we see this in Apex, very common. So how would I use Scale Center, to kind of track down that, and then let's see what we can do once we
Sure.
have.
So let me start with how we would troubleshoot. So when
Okay.
I have been in this troubleshooting space since 2013.
That's
I remember being on customers' side, debug logs or something that I would actively look on to find, what is happening. And then to your point, what is conflicting? Where are the issues surfacing? So what we do is, if you are a user, the very first thing that you want to know is, in that time frame, tell me everything that's going on. Like, to your point, is there any bulk API job that's loading up? So when I selected this, the first thing that you see, the first chart that we show you, is average request time broken down by the type of transaction. So this is where, as a developer, you understand, okay, for this time frame, I see that there are a lot of requests that are report related.
Mhm.
So this red spike, right? So you immediately know, okay, there was maybe a dashboard refresh, or maybe a single report that spiked a lot,
Yeah, so
because this is
all type of operations, just to set level context for everyone, right?
exactly,
We know all type of operations that are happening in the time frame, right? And
exactly.
I think that is what I mean, that is what is very difficult actually, unless you
Yeah,
actually tap into the logs. And obviously for Apex developers, I mean, the logs are only going to give you only Apex. But I think
right.
we have to look at other things like data operation that are happening, any API, update that's happening. So this is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so you get a full view, like bird's eye view of at that point when you experienced that rollock, everything that's happening in your org, what processes are running, what type of transactions, and also the volume. So you're seeing here which type of integration, for example. So if you see purple here, right? So UI requests obviously will be high because everything contributes to a UI. But
Mhm.
followed shortly after that, this line is actually REST API. And if you click on any of these, right, you're able to isolate them individually. So all these charts are clickable so that you know which color represents what type of transaction.
Got it.
You're also getting VF remoting requests, so you exactly know what is happening. And this is just quick sanity check. Okay, if I see something abnormal, like right here, I said report is taking time. You immediately know what could be the problem. The
Okay.
next view that we give you is app CPU.
Mhm.
This is Apex, what is happening at the app tier. Is there a spike here? So you definitely see a spike here that's correlated to volume. So maybe there were more users at that point. That's why this went up. And again, if you correlate all these charts, you can correlate on the timeline. So you're able to see what was running at that time. For Rollock specifically, you're interested in database
Yeah.
because Rolocks happened at the database. So this
Right.
is where you would see, database CPU chart to see where is the spike.
Hmm.
And if I go down specifically, obviously this org does not have that many Rolocks,
Okay.
but this has more callout errors, for example.
Hmm.
This is where you would see what type of errors are occurring.
Got it.
Now, as a user, if you're particularly interested in Rollock, you would just drag this
Okay.
and you would start analysis on it. So the different types of analysis that we offer are Apex summary, concurrent
Mhm.
Apex database, flow, governor limits, list view reports, and integration rollock. So these are the ones that we have started with because these are the ones that we saw customers more often than not hit it.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense. Yes. Okay. So how
so
about we open one of them and see what happens? Like for
yeah,
example,
so let me show you the experience of what would happen once you click it. So let's
yeah,
say you do the roll-up analysis and you just give it some time. Let's say August 31, 10, 23 is when I raised this report. And I can just give my name so that I know it was me who created it because reports will be generated in one place. So you want to know which one you triggered versus some other admin or some other user.
got it.
As soon as you hit that, that's where we'll start the backend investigation. So you see analysis has started and it says navigate to the performance analysis tab to check
Okay.
the progress. This is also the second tab here on the left.
I see. Okay.
And very quickly, you'll start seeing request date, start time, end time, and the status of it. So it's in progress. I just triggered it. It will show you the report name and you can come back and check status here.
Got it.
Now, let me show you something existing, right? So let's see if we take the Rollock example. Let's say if you're taking a sample report, this is what the report will look like
Mhm.
after you have generated it.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is a Rollock report.
Hmm.
It says that there were, 500 Rolocks at this point.
Hmm.
And if I go to the Rollock tab,
Yeah.
what you see is, first of all, which user is causing those rollouts.
Okay.
So
So
here you see the user ID.
I see. Okay.
So if it's a particular, let's say you're doing some data migration, like you said, right? Bulk data load. Typically in your implementation, you would have a dedicated integration user created just for the migration piece. This is where you'll be able to isolate such kind of users so you know whether it's valid. Yes, there is some migration happening probably. That's why all these are user IDs from your org that we give you in terms of the split of how many records they are processing at that time.
Okay. Cool. That makes
Second one you mentioned, Mohit, parent and child. So this is where we tell you maximum rollouts are happening at account.
mm,
And the next one is contact,
mm,
right? So here, this is a distribution to tell you, okay, the locks are happening in these entities, so to speak. So you exactly know where to look at.
got it.
And then we tell you where the locked record is, which are the maximum locked records. So if there is a specific account that
Mm.
is locked multiple times, you have these counts to go to and
Oh, that's
see
awesome.
which is that. This is where you come to know of any skew that's happening. Maybe it's a ownership skew. This
Got
is how you'll interpret this result.
Got it. That's awesome. So you are saying, okay, we went to the user, we found out the user, we found out the
Yeah.
object, and then we found out the exact records that are happening. So we can
Yeah.
take a look at that record. Okay. I think
Yes.
that's helpful. But I think what is interesting is what you are now showing, like because
Yeah.
for developers, right, I don't think we'll have access to those objects and records once in production. But I think what is critical is to see that entry points. Okay.
Entry point. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the chart to show you the entry point. So we know there is a send approval email, async that's happening in this space. What is the runtime? And again, you can sort it. All these columns are sortable. And you can see what was the entry point that was triggered at that point. So this is where we will give you everything, any entry point, whether it's a component, whether it's an Apex class, all of them get captured here.
Okay, including like triggers, your classes.
Yes.
Okay, so that goes from the entry point to the exit point. Is it correct,
Yes.
or like how is okay? So that goes from
Yes.
the transaction. Like you use the transaction, and then you see this was the entry point. These are all the Apex classes that are happening when this transaction is happening. Okay.
That's right. That's right. So all of this is in the Rollup analysis. Now, to you, if you're interested, let's say in overall Apex, right,
Yeah,
at that given time frame, the very first view you can go to is Apex summary.
I see.
This is where you get a view of which are the most used classes for that time window. Again, this is all for everything is for that specific time frame. It's not generally which are the most used.
Yeah,
I just want to call that out.
right.
So you see this. There is something called scorecard viewer, then triggers, and then you have a distribution again in terms of percentages, right? And then you have details broken down by runtime. How many run longer than 5 seconds? Because these are the ones you need to actively look at for concurrency, for example.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, one question I have, it's coming from the community, is that a sum of all runtimes or average runtime?
Average runtime. Yeah.
Average runtime.
So if you see, it's total average runtime that we are giving.
Got it. Got it.
And then you see Apex execution time. Let's say you have a class that has a callout. The callout time will show here as well.
Hmm.
And this is where you can see whether it's any backend integration that is running slow. So that's why we expose the callout time
Yeah, yeah.
column as well.
Karishma, if you don't mind, can you like zoom it a bit? You know, like can we zoom your screen a bit? Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, that's much better. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, so count, yes. Okay. So it says okay. So average time and then the Apex execution time. Okay.
Right.
Along with the
So
CPU time. Okay.
this is all observability data, right? We're telling you these are the top 15 or top 10. Here
Hmm.
is what the distribution looked like in terms of how many times they ran, what was the average time, whether they're spending more time in the Apex layer, is there a call out associated to it, so
Yeah,
on
and
and
if
so forth.
you yeah, and on the Apex, I think it is going to the method level detail, right? I
Yes,
mean, okay, so that I think that is very important for our developers who are watching there, right? It
yes,
actually goes to that method level detail. So you really know this method and these are the things, So I think
yes.
that's great. That's awesome.
And then, so this is by count or most used, but then you also have to mix it up with the slowest ones, right? So, okay, something ran 10 minutes, but every time it ran, it's taking 10 seconds. Then it's a real problem.
Yeah.
Versus something ran 10 times, but it's only taking zero point 0.1 millisecond. Then I don't care about it because I know it's
Yeah.
from a efficiency standpoint, it's performant. So this is where we give you the second lens, which is the slowest classes. Again, these are all sortable. by now you already know there's something called scorecard view controller which needs to be optimized because it's
Yeah.
showing up in multiple places. It showed up in Rollout, it's showing up in slowest classes. You also see the percentage of slow loads. So 82% of the times when this interface runs, it's slow, which is a concern, right? I need to look at it. That maybe there's something very basic that I can change that will make this better. Same thing, we give you the count over 5 seconds, total count, apex execution time, call out time, if any.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. So that is awesome. I think that already gives us a lot of hint into what's happening. At least we know that why
Right.
it's happening, right? And from that point, I think it's architectural change or code
Yes.
changes. And I want to give some guidance here for developers watching. Again, we appreciate that you are there in this channel. Invite your friends. We keep on sharing a lot of knowledge at codeLive, bringing all of the product gurus and experts from internally Salesforce. So at this point, right, I mean, and from my experience, right, usually when somebody says, I have a CPU problem, right, we see if they are not, if they are doing things that they should do, for example, not writing queries within for loop, not doing DML within for loop,
Yeah.
the data volume that they are working with. And most of the times my solution is like, okay, if you're doing all those things correctly and you're still hitting the limits, right, probably the only way something can be done in Apex is break that into two different transactions, let it happen asynchronous, like
Yeah.
for example, you have a trigger where you are doing something, some kind of a calculation,
Yeah.
or does it need to be like truly real time, like can I kick off like an asynchronous queuable class, which can do that transaction for me? Or let's say you're working on creating some shared records, can I do that in an asynchronous method, right? That's what I usually encourage. So
Yeah.
that's one pattern that I want to share. Like that's one of the best practices. Like unless you need something like synchronously, go asynchronous. But again, all limits in Salesforce are equal. Like there is
Yes.
there is number of limits to how much asynchronous you can go, right? So it's always a balance, right? And one of the things that I always do is also make use of platform events. That's been super handy tool. Platform events also have limitations, a lot of limitations, I would say, when you work with an external system. But when you
Mhm.
are internally using platform events, like let's say triggering a platform event and then probably listening them in your Apex code, that is the time that the limits are really generous. So
Yes.
make use of them, make use of both these patterns, actually balance out between them. And I have seen, like, a lot of efficiency gain just by doing these. And also something that people don't talk about, or at least don't implement. They talk, I think I've seen a lot of talks, but not implementations. When I review some code, is like using platform cache for your static data. Like when you're hitting, like, limits, see if there is anything that can be cached, you using or cache or session cache. So these are like typical three things that I tell. But I think what I like about Scale Center is how much it kind of gives me an analysis to do, right, both as an architect and the developer, to sit down together and see and find out, okay, these are like these 4 classes or 5 classes that we need to refactor. Let's look at the business process that we have coded here, and let's
Yeah.
see how we can balance out with these techniques that I just talked through.
Yes. And thanks for sharing that, Mohit. Two things I would like to add there. Um, One is, just like you said, back in the day when I was in the field, I would also talk to business users, and my first question would be, does it need to be real time? Is it okay to be asynchronous? Like when you really dig deeper, you'll identify a lot of requirements start as, I want this right away, and then they slowly go to, okay, no, it's okay if I get notified or if I have the information in an hour because it's not business critical. So having that dialogue to say, is, does it need to be absolutely real time, or can we have it near real time? Multiple times the design has changed based on that simple conversation with business owners. The second thing, platform cache, is one of the most powerful features and the one of the most underused features on our platform, I would say.
Hmm.
To your point, it does brilliant in terms of caching queries that are repeatedly executed. Yeah, I would say anybody who's not got their hands dirty in platform cache, do it today, because it is indeed one of the features that we recommend when it comes to scaling beyond a certain point.
Yeah, I
Um,
have a couple of questions coming out from the community. Again, I want to shout out to Chris Peterson. Chris from our Apex team, I think he's here as well in
mhm.
the chat, monitoring some. So one of the questions that I'm getting here is around like, can we export and save performance reports since it retrieved last 30 days data only?
Yes, we are working on giving you a download PDF feature, so that should be coming up real soon. And that's exactly for that. We've got tons of feedback in terms of doing trending, in terms of, oh, this happened. Maybe I did a release last August. I want to see what that looked like, what the numbers look like then, and what they look like now.
Yeah, the other question is I'm just wondering this wouldn't be adding any additional overhead, which is significant since it's kind of logging a lot of details.
No, no overhead. Just because whatever you view here, and the UI part is just living in where you see the screen is. All the processing, the insights, everything is done off platform. So you will not have any overage or performance impact because of running Scale Center.
Yeah.
We that is all in the backend.
Yeah, somebody is actually Andrew Russo is saying, when can we have the three limit increase? It seems to be way low. Can you use
Yes.
Black Tab Magic to increase it for my org?
Yes, we are working on increasing that limit. We do have a way to increase it. If it's is something that's really business critical for you, Andrew, please drop me a note, and we will take a look at it. But having said that, we are actively working on increasing it for everybody. And the way we are doing it is not doing it per day or per 24 hours, but rather going it on a weekly time period, because we realized, let's say there is a issue, you probably need this limit to be increased for that particular day, but you may not have an issue for the next 6 days, so you would not run any
So what is
analysis.
this limit? I'm trying to understand, like, what is this three limit here?
So when you see the investigation, let me go back to the org performance page,
Yeah.
and I'll show you another way to get around that as well. So let's say I do 4 hours, and in the charts where you could run analysis.
Hmm.
Uh, so let's say this one. These analysis you can do three
Okay.
in a 24-hour period.
Okay. In a day, you can only do three of them. Okay.
Correct. And
Um,
that's just because right now this is the first release of the product. We are actively working on increasing this significantly higher. If you do the consolidated report, you get a view of a lot of things in the consolidated report. So what we have seen customers use is they just do the consolidated report investigation, because then they can get a view into all different aspects instead of raising individual investigations.
Yeah. Andrew, please get in touch with Karishma for your case. Seems like Andrew has a case here. Please get in
Yeah.
touch, and we'll see what can be done there. Other thing that somebody brought it up here is the interface related report does not pinpoint which particular interface has the problem. I don't know which interface related report. Paul, can you further clarify this? Do you know, Karishma, if this
I'm wondering if it's the integration performance.
Uh, please clarify. Okay, we can move on. I'll come back to that. All right. So
Yeah.
this we saw. Okay, so this is really neat and handy. Of course, it's giving us a lot of details, even for Apex developers, right? I mean,
Hmm.
architects can involve Apex developers and help, etc. Um, so that's great. So we talked about rollout errors. We also talked about I think rollout errors are the common one, and then of
Yeah.
course CPU performance. CPU comes in every conversation with LDV orgs, like large data volume org,
Yeah.
and we just talked about that. So those are the two things. All right. So what else are we doing, Karishma, apart from these two
Yes.
things, right?
One thing that I didn't show which is number one asked for developers, is Apex concurrency. The most commonly
Okay.
hit error. We have that report as well. We actually show you a trend of how many concurrent requests, whether it's spiking up, going down. We have the contributors here. So if
Hmm.
any time the user sees concurrent limit exceeded, raise a concurrent Apex investigation in Scale Center, and you'll know right away who's the culprit in terms of the execution. Database, you see database CPU is an important metrics. We know that this one needs to be looked at because it's consuming a lot of database and it's holding that thread, and that's why it's long running. It's taking more than 5 seconds. Maybe it's a very complex DML that's running and we need to break it down, or it's a query that needs to be optimized. So this again is very powerful. And the other one that I want to quickly show before I go to what else is database performance. This is the very first time where if you see a database spike, we are actually giving you the entry point here, as
Uh,
well as the sockwill that's contributing towards
oh,
that limit.
that's awesome. I love it. So it is gonna give me like the correct socket. Okay.
Yes,
Okay. And
it
then
gives you down to, and if it's a report that was causing the spike, you would see the entry point as a report ID. Here it's
I
all like this one, for example. So we give you where is the database contention happening? Is it due to a report? Is it due to a SOQL? We have entities as well. Again, entry points. We have which type of processes are holding up the database, whether it's REST API, again, reports, dashboards. And this is your database view. So you Apex, you saw the app view. This is your DB view. And then you have additional views to look at by user, by CRUD operations. You're
mm,
performing maximum updates. There are some deletes happening. Maybe you can do deletes off hours, so on and so forth. So I wanted to quickly show you this because this, at least the database performance, is one of my favorites because we are
yeah.
getting going right down to the stack
Oh
to
yeah.
the database and telling you exactly which sockwill you need to fix at what line.
Yeah, that is awesome actually. I think, this is gonna be really useful feature, And I just want to remind that there's always something called as query planner, a tool that is so handy if you are trying to like find the most efficient sockle for your use cases. Usually it doesn't come into picture again, as I said, like you don't think about it when you write it, you just write a sockle without thinking about like what fields you queried, how much data that object will have in the future
Yeah.
down the pipe. Like, this is something I learned, hard lessons, right? We just code it, and we don't ask enough questions actually as a developers. I think that is one of the I think the good qualities of a good developer is like ask a lot of questions, especially Apex developers, right? Ask like, what would be the data volume. You might not have an architect that you might be working, but in
Yeah.
any project, make sure that you ask questions like, okay, in next 3 years, right, how much data this table is going to have. So those
Hmm.
kind of questions I think is critical to ask. And then do your best in terms of like using query planner to make sure you write an efficient sockle. I think that goes a long way, and we have a lot of techniques already. There's a lot of white paper and developer blogs on like how to write and make like an efficient sockle. In terms of whether you want to avoid, you definitely want to avoid like full scan,
Yeah.
scan, use indexes, avoid nulls. So these are some things that just came out. And also concurrency. I just want to say that if you're facing concurrency issues, right, again, asynchronous is your best friend. you know if you are facing concurrency, that means there's a lot of synchronous requests that are happening, and again, platform events and asynchronous Apex are your best friends. That's like the tools that you have, to sort of work with it. And of course, business process. Sometimes you're like, oh, what, we don't, I mean, this is not a business process that could be solved some other way. Maybe
Yes.
it's something that could be solved in some ways, some different ways, some elegant ways than just putting Apex for everything. What I've seen is like throw Apex at everything and not knowing like it will have its own limitation is also like part of the problem. So
Yes.
cool, awesome. So moving on, right? I want to we have 15 more minutes, and thanks for actually showing the scale center. I think it's good. I think one of the questions that I had was, all of these data, do you think ever you will expose as an API, or it's always going to be like UI based?
So, for now, what we are thinking is, just giving you observability data. Again, you'll have to kind of make sense of what it is.
Mhm.
Um, where the roadmap is going, to your point, Mohit, you called out about, use the query plan and see, do not run a full table scan, do not use an in clause incorrectly, right?
Yeah.
We are heading in the direction of insights. So if you see these scale insights, this is where we want to take away the complexity of you analyzing and understanding what to do next,
Hmm.
and we are going to become the product to tell you, okay, this is the problem, here is why it's a problem, and this is what you do about it. And that's where the insights come to play. And insights is something that we are planning to expose, and that could maybe be directly to you, or it could be integrated with the builders, right? The code builder, lightning app builder. Like, we want to be able to show these insights at the right time, at the right place, so
Right.
that you don't even get to the point where you've reached test and now you need to change something. So
Got
long term, the goal is to further shift left and give you these insights as you're building or as you're writing code. So that's where the product is headed, and also not just tell you this is the software, but also give you recommendation to say what to tweak in the software to make it scalable. And the first use case that we have taken, which is very exciting, is Apex.
it.
So let's talk about Apex Guru and show you how the insights flavor of Scale Center is going to look like.
Yeah, yeah, excited to see Apex Guru. So just to level set, right? Apex Guru is not in in production yet. It's not generally available. I think it's pilot, right? Correct.
Pilot. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's very much pilot. I'll just show you quickly one diagram to explain to you how it works. So
Yeah.
today you have static code and analyzers available readily in the market.
Yeah.
Apex Crew is the way it would add value beyond that is there are two things that we take into consideration.
Hmm.
We are actually using AI models where we are detecting some anti patterns in the code. So, the
Got
first two anti patterns that we have released as part of our pilot are the ones that we saw customers run into multiple times and contribute to the app CPU maximum number of times. The first one is schema.get global describe.
it.
The
Hmm.
second one is schema.describe s objects.
I
So
see.
if you use these anti patterns, these are the ones that commonly could contribute to the spike in the way they are written, not necessarily the method itself. But
Got
let's
it.
say if it's in a for loop, it exponentially contributes to the
Oh
app
yeah.
CPU
Oh
spike.
yeah. Anybody who's worked with Describe knows
Yes.
this, right?
Yeah,
If you put it in for loop, it's yeah, it's gonna be a lot expensive operation.
right. So here is where we are using code T5 AI model, and we've trained our models to look for these anti patterns. So
Hmm.
static analysis will tell you that this probably is not the best piece of code, but we are supplementing that information with runtime behavior. So
Okay.
we have your org, we have your scale details, we have runtime information, and we have profiling systems in-house which are actually measuring how much did it contribute to the CPU spike. So let's say
Mm.
you have a method that is only running one time, maybe it didn't contribute. But let's say it's running for an extended period of time and it's in a critical business path where it gets executed 50 times,
Mm.
then it is causing CPU spike.
I
That is something no static analysis tool will give you because these are flight recordings in house where we have that runtime information to supplement.
got it. Awesome. So
S-
let's take a look at the the Apex Guru.
Yes,
Again, it's in pilot. Do you have like a roadmap plan for that? Again, safe harbor for all of you. But do you know when it's coming out?
I would say in the next 2 to 3 releases,
Okay,
uh, where we want to roll it out broadly. Right now, it's pilot two patterns. We want to add a little bit more patterns.
makes sense.
Now, the insights functionality works a little bit different. You saw in Scale Center, the investigation is at that minute in time, tell me what is happening. So that's
Mhm.
more of a troubleshooting triaging use case.
Right.
Insights, it's more of an overall org health optimization.
I
So
see.
this is where you can generate the report, let's say once a week.
Mm,
And here is where we will show you critical code recommendations. So we categorize it into three categories: critical, minor, major. And we tell you what is, where do you have to fix. So if I see the first insight, it says if you need a small number of S objects, use a fast method that consumes less CPU and memory.
mm,
This is what is coming in from the model. we
okay.
have we give you what the code is today,
Yeah.
and then we also give you the recommended code. So this is where I was talking about. We want to move into the direction of not just telling you where the problem is, but also telling you how to fix it.
Oh, that's
So
awesome. Yeah.
the first part tells you which class, entry point, and why is it showing up as critical. And the second part tells you exactly the code that you need to replace it with to solve for the spike that you see.
I see. Cool. And just out of curiosity, right? Will it be integrated within Code Builder and other developer tools that we have?
Yes, we are working with the dev tooling team to see how to bring this into the builders going forward. But
This is
um,
exciting. I mean, thanks for giving just a glimpse into, like, what is coming down the pipe. Really
yeah,
exciting to see that it will go to the code level and tell you, like, don't use this method. Instead, use this because this consumes less CPU. Yeah, that is so awesome. I have a question that just came up here. So again, I'll summarize it for you. So I think what Fahad Ali is asking us, and Fahad, thanks for the question actually,
mhm,
is what about deployment times? Like, there are orgs, I read a lot of community posts around, a lot of posts on X, also on LinkedIn. So I've seen like a lot of people complaining about, special, and this happens especially during when the release is going on, like Salesforce release is going on, like
yeah.
metadata API deployment, right? When you're deploying using metadata API. So here Fahad wants to know, like, are there any metrics that we capture in that sense, like metadata API performance,
Yeah.
those kind of things?
So thank you for that question. And again, it's something that we've heard from a few customers that we piloted with actually last year. What we envision to do, and this is not something that's been actively worked on right now, so I don't know how soon we can prioritize it, but I'm just telling you my train of thought of how we are approaching it.
Yeah.
When we see these first level graphs where we are seeing average request times, uh, we are trying to map important release information or alert information. So let's say if we see this time frame, to your point, if a deployment happened, we want to give like a vertical line and call out or label it or annotate it to say,
Mm,
at 2 p.m. there was an active deployment. So it will just give you an additional insight of what else was happening.
right.
Same thing we've heard with prom alerts. So if you're a signature customer, you get proactive monitoring where you get an engineer to work with. Um, and those alerts go to you as cases. Customers that have that prom feature are also asking us to map those alerts here
Mm,
along with Salesforce major releases.
got
So
it.
that way, you in this 24-hour time frame, we are going to annotate some of these key things that we know that contribute to a lot of database time, for example.
Mm,
That way, you have the broader view on what is happening in my org.
I see. Cool. Yeah, yeah, that is very, very, very interesting actually. Yeah, that's
And I also see a question from Nikit saying CDC platform events. So this is just the version one of the product. Obviously, it's going to bring in a lot more platform areas. So platform events, live agent, search, MQ, a lot of these areas that we still need to bring in from a feature set standpoint. So I would say we have a very big roadmap because there's so much in core itself that we need to solve for. So they will be coming up.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing all of that. So I just had one question around. on Apex Guru, right? So one of the questions I had was like, is there a list like for existing developers right here,
Mhm.
who are working in the field every day? Is there a kind of a list or where, I mean, I'm pretty sure like when you showed me that describe Apex, like use like type for and then use the describe Apex, instead of like just using describe call.
Mhm.
Is there like a list that we can get to or something that we need to spin up to find out, if we can give some recommendations,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. The great point. That's actually one of the asks that I had, where can
okay.
we crowdsource a list of patterns that you have seen, typically be the pain points in your experience. That way, we can prioritize those anti patterns, so to speak,
Got it.
and build it into the roadmap.
Yeah, I know. Just to iterate here some of the patterns that I know is like pretty much not using like sockle within for
Yeah.
loops. It's like not using DMLs. Also queries, writing efficient queries. But like to the method level, right? I mean, going on like, okay, which function uses less time? Like for
Yeah.
example, I've seen people like even go to the for loop level and telling me that, hey, write this for loop in this way because this consumes less time than writing it in the other way, because there are different variations for that.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of interesting things, and I always used to wonder, like, those patterns, do they matter a lot? Like, do they matter a lot, or is it? So you are saying you have like machine learning and other things to go and
Yeah.
uh, tell you that this is best or this is this is something that needs more work, right? So
Yes.
you're using machine learning to look at the runtime analytics and then
Yes.
say,
So, as and when we are getting a pilot customer signed up, obviously there is an aspect of scanning their code to understand where the bottlenecks are. So, our models are getting trained based on all these codes that we are getting from a pilot customer to
mhm,
see what are the common anti patterns. And then we, from our experience, know as well that some of these contribute to more CPU than the others. So, we started with that list, which
mhm.
are the common culprits in our opinion.
Yeah.
Uh, that's the approach that we are taking. Having said that, if there are experts out there who would love to contribute into the anti-pattern list,
Oh, we have a
uh,
lot of experts in our community, a lot of Apex
yes,
gurus, I must say. Uh,
yes,
you know, I
rightly so.
Yeah, rightly so, because they are on the field, they work every day in and out, day out with the customer. They look at logs so much and so much that they know that this is taking a lot of CPU. So my request to all of you is reach out to Karishma or myself, and share some of them with us, and obviously we have Apex team too, so we can obviously reach out to them and kind of look at it, right? Like, okay, um, if this is something that we should like kind of start publicizing, put it in our product, saying do this way only, because this is probably the best way to do it. Okay, cool. I think we are almost top of the hour here. Just 2 minutes left. uh, and I think we have got all the questions sort of answered. So I just want to take a moment and thank you, Karishma, and also thanks to everyone. Actually, you will be surprised. Like, I was noting down the the count, and the count near never went down. So it seems like people were really attentive, and everyone
That's
was
great.
so much into your content. Like, they wanted to know about these tools. So again, great help from you for a community, and also thanks to your team. Actually, I mean, the entire team. I know you are representing, but you have engineers and product
Yes,
managers who actually are working behind the scenes to give us products like this. So congratulations to them for taking at least the first step, and I can't wait to see what gets built out in the future here. So thank you again.
absolutely, absolutely. And reach out on Salesforce Scalability is our Trailblazer community. So reach out with any questions. We monitor that community group very often.
Awesome. So thank you again, everyone, and this was a great, Code Live session. Please let us know your feedback and look forward for more sessions from us. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.